Ladies and gentlemen, we're live. No fucks given radio, that's what's up. I am the unknown factor. Firstly, real quick, I just gotta say, I love all you motherfuckers supporting this shit and listening to every, all the insanity we do. I know it covers a lot. Last night we got into the CIA, aliens at my broadcast, myself and DKB. Hardaway thankfully didn't get killed by the CIA. He was just held after at work, so just to let everyone know he's not dead. And then Maximus Limitus did stop by, and we got deep. You can check that episode out on the YouTube. It will be posted later on No Fucks Given Radio, ladies and gentlemen. But tonight, that ain't what tonight about. That ain't what tonight is about at all, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, it's comic books and the debut of a new show and the welcoming of a new host to the NFGR family. That being Tony D. Tony D, what's good?
Thank you, Unknown Factor, for having me on the radio and letting me host the comic book Oblivion. Woo!
I love that name, too, on a different note. I love the name, and I also love, shout out to Mr. DKB for that graphic y'all see right over there. I dig the fuck out of how he did that with the thing, and I don't know, he does wizardry with programs, so that's not my deal. I'm just a host and an MC. I don't do fucking graphics. That's Shell and DKB. Shout out to everything they do for the radio. But I love that graphic, and I think it represents so well the first topic of the debut of this show. Tony, Comicgate makes my head hurt.
Yeah, it's complicated, man. I mean, we're going to get into it, and let me preface this by saying, before we get into it, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit. Of course, the Unknown Factor, you guys all know from the radio station. You're on, like, how many shows, Unknown Factor? Just ballpark it for me.
5 or 6, maybe 7. A
lot of shows, man.
I think. Wait. Well, no, wait. It's dude. It's changed a lot. I mean, the radio's getting close to 3 years old now, and I mean, there's been fluctuation because we're running a whole radio, so the program's changed just like you would on any TV or whatever.
Five's a good number. I mean, that's a lot of work. So you're a radio guy, you know what you're doing here. What is your background in comics? Like, what is your comic book connection? People like to know their nerd cred.
I motherfucking loves them, man. If it wasn't for comics, I would not read like I do. They were the first things that I ever read as a kid. I still, as much as my budget allows, and the library, because look, my library is the shit, ladies and gentlemen. It really is. Anderson, Indiana has a fantastic library, and specifically for comic books. Between that and my budget, I mean, I read it as much as that and time will allow. I'm just a fucking fan, man, really.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's an important distinction in the world of comics for the comic fans tuning in, because there are fans, there are creators, there are comic book journalists, there are comic book editors. There's all sorts of people in the comic book industry, and a lot of times retailers, that's a big group, and a lot of times the lines get blurred. The lines get blurred in the world of comics, and that's why there's a lot of crazy stuff in comics in general, even before Comicsgate exploded. My background, just to give you a quick rundown of my nerd cred, for a more extensive version of it, you could check out the last episode of Super Nerd Tendo, the previous show, which I guess I helped you kill.
Hey, look, it was that was the final episode of Super Nerd Tendo. Was your episode, Tony? Now you didn't help kill it, man. I mean, it happens. Look, I can't
just get it.
You want to know how many shows? Look, there are more shows on this radio that have been canceled over the 2+ years than shows that I host.
Well, that's good, I guess. That's a good ratio. But yeah, I just want, if people want to go back and hear my whole detailed resume, go back then. But the quick rundown is I write comics, most known for my work on the Simpsons comics at Bongo. I've done about 60 plus issues or stories. I should say stories. You don't do whole issues at Bongo necessarily. I've done. I had a story in Image. I've done my own comics. I used to work for Kenzer and Company in the world of gaming, which is right on the border of comics. And I did gaming stuff. I did comics for Kenzer, which was gaming comics. My other nerd cred includes working at a comic book store. I was a manager at Cosmic Comics. I used to have a TV show about comics called The Comic Book Show, based out of Philadelphia. I did that for about 2 years, 93, 94. And let's see. That's about it for my comic nerd cred off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few things.
But
I'm pretty...
Can I throw into my comic nerd cred, Tony, that almost every track I make as an artist has a comic book reference?
Oh, okay, cool. That's cool. So check out that, fanboys. Check out the Unknown Factor stuff. He's got comic book stuff in there. Cool.
I
like Easter egg.
Yeah, I do. I just litter my fucking raps with comic book references. I do, like, fucking everything from Preacher to Marvel shit. You'll probably never hear a DC reference, though, because I'm not a fan. Nothing against DC. It's just not my cup of tea.
Ooh. DC is good. They're all good.
That's fine.
Preacher is DC. Preacher's
okay.
Vertigo.
Okay, yeah. That's Vertigo. And I know that's a subsidiary, but it's different.
Yeah, that's true. But originally, the Vertigo line, or some of the characters before they launched the Vertigo line, were in the DC universe. So it was Swamp Thing, the regular Swamp Thing comic. Alan Moore did that and took his take on it and really sort of set the bar for what the Vertigo stuff would turn into to a large extent. And it's interesting that we touched on the Vertigo stuff because the Vertigo stuff is kind of interesting because it sort of ties into this whole Comicsgate thing, which is very complicated. Now, if we got some fanboys and fangirls tuning in, chill your shit, okay? This is no fucks given radio. There's cursing involved, so chill the fuck out. We're going to have a little bit of a frank discussion about Comicsgate. If you're going to take this personally and be outraged, I invite you to go away. Because that, seriously, before we fucking offend you, do yourself a favor and don't be offended by turning off the show. Just turn it off. If you're one of these people who are so soft that you can't deal, then don't be here. Okay? This isn't for you. This is for people who want to talk about a real issue that's happening in comics. This is comic book Oblivion and No Fucks Given Radio. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to have real discussions. And real discussions will sometimes be very hurtful because you'll hear things, seriously, you'll hear things that will make you mad and that will make you go, oh, I don't agree with that at all, or whatever. Okay, you might be offended. But as Jordan Peterson says, if you don't have the right to be offended, if you're not willing to be offended, you can't think, right? You have to risk being offended so you can think.
Yeah, very true. But I'll tell you what, I spent yesterday doing a lot of research on the CIA. First off, I don't recommend it. I do not recommend going in and trying to research the conspiracies that the CIA has been part of. It'll make your fucking head hurt, right? It will. That's just what it was. And then today, I spent researching Comicgate. Now, I've grabbed a couple. I hope I don't offend anybody. Like, I just realized I grabbed their fucking Twitter handles and everything. So I might get some people shit on because, like, I'm showing the tweets and who the fuck they came from. Can I do that? That's okay, isn't it? I'm not going to get in trouble.
So you're showing on the video
the tweet they made and who made it. Yeah, that's legal. They fucking made the tweet public. I can fucking show it. Fuck them.
Yeah. Sure. I mean,
the
as long
first
as you're
thing,
not saying,
yeah, like I said,
don't
I
say
grabbed a
anything
couple.
defamatory, but I mean, obviously these people. My advice would be this: if you're going to show tweets from somebody who's definitely going to be offended, I wouldn't even show them because I wouldn't give that person the attention.
All right,
you know what I mean?
I don't think. Well, there's one that might be offensive or offended. But the first one was from a gentleman, Tony Davison. And it, like I said, I just typed in Comicgate and looked it up on Twitter and was just seeing what everybody was talking about with that hashtag. And this is something that I found. Look, he says, I still try to understand this Comicgate. I see harassment of creators and other readers by some of that hashtag with it. And then I see others say it stands for everything welcome to make comics, or to make great comics and free of harassment. So here's the thing. Why not just be an arsehole to others?
An arsenal, did you say?
Yeah, that's what he typed. Yeah.
Okay.
Quick early preacher reference. Yeah, but I mean that's.
Arsehole.
Yeah, arsehole. I think it's interesting that he said that because that's what I noticed in this Comicgate. Researching it, Tony, this shit seems to go both fucking ways.
Oh, absolutely. I would say it's very much like if you look at and let's not get into this, but the analogy is very apt that the 2016 presidential election, right? Everybody who hates Trump hates him with such a passion that they've gone overboard. And it's not that Trump doesn't say stupid, offensive things. He certainly has. But
that's an understatement.
He also has some points. And I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for him. I'm a libertarian. I voted for Gary. So before you get all up in my face that I'm a Trump supporter, fuck you. But that's the analogy. So I see this guy, Richard Meyer, who's the head of Comicsgate. He is like the comic book version of Trump. He's come in, he's said some awful things, and he's gotten a lot of attention for himself. And although he didn't get elected president of comics, in a way, he sort of did because fans are giving them their money to do all these comics now. And while you can say, sure, some of the stuff he said was pretty awful. Like, I will say, if I had to talk to Meyer, I would say, listen, you have points, but your points are being undermined, just like Trump, by you calling people names. And, you know, the names you're calling, and Meyer's like an ex-Marine, so I don't expect him to have a perfect PC mouth, but Jesus Christ, when you call someone a cum dumpster, man, it's on. You know, nobody wants to be called a cum dumpster under any circumstances.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I can imagine that if, like, as an artist in the underground, that if I started throwing around cum dumpster towards other artists, I'm gonna have a lot of diss tracks I have to respond to.
Yeah, and you're in a business where, you know, people are say a lot of curse words, but like cum dumpster is like, and he said it to a woman, which makes it even worse. Like, you say that to a guy, he'd just be like, ah, fuck you. But you say that to a woman, like, it's another level of like, holy shit, dude. Like, what is wrong with you? But again, I don't expect Meyer to be this PC guy. They don't teach Marines to be PC, wonderful people who negotiate. But at the same time, the reaction to Meyer is totally overblown. I mean, look, if you don't like Meyer, don't watch his fucking videos. Don't watch him. Don't buy his comics and ignore him, because that's what people have done for thousands of years.
But, you know, Tony, to that point, I don't think that's something we do anymore. I know. Yeah, I think anymore when you are displeased with someone, or if you just if somebody puts out a fucking book that you're not a fan of, It's not, oh, I'm just not going to read that. It's you go on and you talk shit on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on fucking Reddit. Like, that's what it is. It's not a society of, you know, accept what you like. It's now become a society of hate what you don't.
Yeah, that's a, wow. Good line, Unknown Factor. You should say that for a song. It's true, though. And Facebook and Twitter and all the social media becomes like this platform to stand up on a soapbox and say, you know why I'm so wonderful? It's because I'm better than those guys. You know why I'm so wonderful? I hate them more than you. Really? Well, you don't hate them enough. You're an asshole. I'm way better than you. And it's just a constant stream of one-upmanship that has nothing to do with comics. Nothing. And the fact that Mark Waid and Bill Sienkiewicz, two big names in comics, waded into this is insanity to me. If I had a third of the career either one of those two had, I wouldn't even be on social media. I'd be too busy making comics and making money. And if I ever went on social media, it would be Tony DiGerolamo's official Twitter. And I would post, here's my latest comic. And people would say stuff, and I'd be like, nah. And I'd go back to my pile of money, and as you would say, Unknown Factor, bitches. My pile of money and bitches. Do they still say that in rap? Money and bitches?
I mean, I don't do... Look, Tony, I'm a little different in all things. I mean, but they do say bitches and money in rap, definitely. I got John. Wait, John, are you saying that I'm fucking just hating on shit that I don't? No, real quick, because I got John saying that we're just hating on something we don't like. That's not.
Who's John?
Just someone in the chat at the moment. Or I mean,
okay.
in the comments over on YouTube, Tony. But in regards to that, it's not that. It's we're discussing something that has become something that is being used as a political agenda in comic books. Because that's what that's what Comicgate is. It's a political agenda above all other things, as far as I can see. And I even found things saying that this was an astroturf. You know what that is? As far as it's astroturfing, like it's not. This is some fucking company paid motherfuckers to go do this, and they're not really truly representative of what they're saying. They're just getting paid to say that.
Yeah, I've heard stuff like that before, but I mean, that seems awfully Machiavellian to me. You know? It seems crazily, you know, are you kidding me? Like that is what you think? Like this is all one big fake thing? You know what I mean? It's like, how fake could this be? Like you're telling me, first off, the comic books, I know the numbers in comics. Okay? I know how much money gets made in the world of comics. Ask me how much money gets made in the world of comics.
How much do you think Marvel pulls in on a monthly basis? Just comic.
No, don't ask me that question. Ask me how much money gets made in the world of comics.
How much money gets made in the world of comics?
Negative money, because they all lose money. Everybody from the top down loses money. The Disney Corporation owns Marvel Comics. Okay? And EC is owned by another mega corporation.
Warner
I guess
Brothers.
It's Time Warner.
Yeah, Warner.
Yeah. Okay? So these guys have a tremendous overhead. Tremendous. Now, there's certain advantages to having all this big stuff. They can go and up north to Quebec, where they print the comics, and they get comics printed for like a penny a piece. That's certainly helpful. Oh, yeah, they're low. Well, maybe not a penny. It's like 2 cents, whatever it is. It's definitely under a nickel, I'll tell you that. If they pay a nickel a comic, they pay too much. So they make some money on comics. But now think about this. These guys pay hundreds of dollars a page to have them drawn and inked and written, okay? So my rate was, at one point, $2.75 a page. That was just for me. That didn't count the was it $2.75? $1.75 a page. No, my friend who was drawing Batman got $2.75 a page. Okay, he was doing the pencils on Batman. That's $2.75 a page. The inker gets, I think, close to the same amount. So call it $500 a page for both of them. Then the writer's going to get something. If I was getting $1.75, then the writer on Batman's got to be getting like $200 a page. All right? So there you got $700 a page. And the letterer gets paid. So throw in another $100 a page, let's say. So that's $800 a page on a comic.
And you didn't include the guy throwing on the color.
Oh, yeah, the colorist. I forgot about him.
Yeah.
Call it $1,000 a page.
Woo.
All right? So at $1,000 a page, 22 pages, a book has cost you $22,000 just for the talent. Okay? Just for the talent. That doesn't even count the people in the office who do all the promotion, who do the editing. It doesn't count the printing. It doesn't count the shipping. So you're talking, and promotion, yeah, what are you talking about per book? Yeah, they save money because they make so many. I mean, they could hire a colorist and they get more out of him on like 3 or 4 books rather than just one. But you're still talking thousands of dollars a book. These guys got to sell 50,000 books just to break even. You know? Not 50,000, more like 10, 20. I mean, they can't. Books now, they're hardly selling. They're hardly selling. They're getting creamed right now. Everybody's going to the internet. So where's all the money? The money's in everything else. The money's in the merchandising, in the movies, and everything. I got out of print comics. I was at a con, and I saw these guys selling T-shirts. All day they're selling T-shirts. $20 a pop. Boom, 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 boom. They're going out, and I'm like, look at these motherfuckers. They are making major bank. I am sitting here begging people to buy a $3 comic. Look at those guys over there. I want to be those guys. The con ends, and I go up to them, and I'm like, you guys had a fantastic day. And they said, this was the worst con we ever did. We're never coming back. And my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, what the heck? Who the hell are these guys? And somebody goes, oh, they do this webcomic called Penny Arcade. That's like, that was their money. T-shirts. They didn't make money on the damn comic. They made money on T-shirts. Yeah, now Penny Arcade's an institution. They make money on all kinds of things. But the comic's just like, yeah, we did some Penny Arcade stuff, but
no,
they're T-shirts, man.
That's what it is now, Tony. And it's not even, like, this is something that's not even unique to comic books. It's something that is crossing all forms of entertainment, really. I mean, because if you look, most music is streamed nowadays. People really don't buy CDs, which to me is sad. Right. I love CDs. I like to think you can see all that shit behind me on the, oh wait, if I can adjust the right, yeah, all them fucking CDs on them shelves. You know, movies, motherfuckers really don't buy movies anymore. They stream that shit, whether it be Hulu, Netflix, or HBO, whatever, Showtime. This is what it's becoming. It's becoming a society that one is very hard to satiate because they're used to getting everything instantaneously, entertainment-wise, and two, we have no connection to the physical aspect of that. It's just, oh yeah, I got entertained for a while, fuck it, and they move on, you know? So it has. Sure. It's come to a point where you've got to have, you know, fucking buttons and T-shirts and shorts and, you know, action figures. I mean, it's become more about merchandise. And I kind of see that aspect because, look, I buy a comic book, I read that comic once, and then it's getting bagged and boarded, and it's gonna sit there. I might read it again if it was fucking great. I mean, but it's gonna have to be great for me to go back and want to read that again. You know,
sure.
Especially to dig it out of a huge collection. If you've got boxes and boxes and boxes, you know, a T-shirt. I'm gonna wear that. I'm gonna hang it up. I'm gonna wear that shit again. I'm gonna hang it up after I clean it. I'm gonna wear it again. Clean it, hang it up, wear it again. That's something.
But let me tie this into Comicsgate though. And here's the tie-in. Comicsgaters are one of the last groups of guys who want to do print comics. They all want to do print. Okay? And it's a dying industry. It's dying. The company I work for, Bongo Comics, just announced that the comics were going on hiatus. They were making money. They were making good money on their comics. Over in Europe, they were selling into millions. They had to be making money at Bongo. Had to be. Now they're going to a new business model. I don't know what that is, but I suspect, I would bet it's all digital. Because why not? Why not make it all digital? And then you download the comic and you read it in your phone or whatever. Why not?
Yeah, and I don't see how Bongo couldn't have been making money based on all the properties they own. Because, The Simpsons, Futurama. I mean, they own a lot of properties that are things you see on television, too. So it's more apt that you're going to be able to get a kid to buy that because it's something they've already been exposed to on TV. So yeah, that amazes me in that aspect. I don't know how in the shit they wouldn't be making money.
Right. Well, I don't want to get too off topic, but like my point is, the Comicsgaters are doing print comics in a dying industry where like everybody's trying to grub for every last dollar. The clock is ticking on Marvel and DC before they do the same thing. They have to. It's already started. Like, my friend bought 50 issues of 500 issues of Batman for $50 a couple of months ago. Like, that's a great deal, right?
Yeah.
Like, the first 500 issues of Batman for $50? What, are you kidding me? Who wouldn't want that if you're a comics fan? And you're talking about $50. That's what is that, like 10 cents an issue? Versus you're going to go to the comic book store and buy a $4 comic that's only 22 pages, buy a new guy you don't even know, when you can get every Neil Adams Batman there ever was. It's insanity. The digital stuff is going to crush the paper at some point. Comic book stores are going to have to completely change their model. And these guys are trying to prop them up a little bit by doing paper comics. And yes, they have said some nasty shit online. But, and here's the but, so has some of these people who don't like them. They have said very nasty shit to people who have nothing to do with Comicsgate. One of the biggest things that just happened was this guy from Alterna Comics, Peter Cimetti, who's not a Comicsgater. He is not in Comicsgate. What he did was, the Comicsgaters had this hashtag called Move the Needle, which I think is like, move the needle means like, hey, let's sell some comics. Right? It has nothing to do with politics. Nothing. It has nothing to do with the shit they said or Ethan Van Sciver, what he said. Nothing to do with that. All it is, let's all sell some comics. Anybody in the comic industry should be able to get behind that. Well, because he retweeted it, they came after him. And he was on Twitter saying, I'm having a nervous breakdown. I'm feeling suicidal. I can't believe this is happening. This is a guy who built his business on $1.50 newsprint comics that nobody does anymore. Nobody's doing newsprint. He's doing books for $1.50 a pop. And former creators came out like, oh, you're with the Comicsgater, before they knew anything about this. Okay? Now, I barely did research on this, and even I could see that Peter is not anywhere close to these Comicsgaters guys. I mean, they know each other, and they've talked, and now they're even closer, thanks to the overreaction from these people. And it's like, chill the fuck out, okay? You can't destroy every person who's ever seen a Comicsgate guy. You can't. You could try. What's that going to get you? It's going to get you a wasteland of a fucking comics industry. It's just going to be a radioactive wasteland of people walking around going, where are the comics? Whatever happened to comic books? You know?
To your point on that, man, I totally see where you're coming from, but the fucking Comicgate people only want to put it out in a print format, and I don't understand that because, as far as I can tell from all the research I did, Comicgate is trying to ostensibly include more diversity, whether that be in sexual orientation or fucking, you know, how they define themselves as gender, race, religion, whatever. That's what they're doing. They're trying to include it all. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Do whatever the fuck you want, as long as it's good quality and an enjoyable story. I'd read it. Look, like Saga. Saga is a fucking great book by Brian K. Vaughan. And
right, I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, that shit touches on so many different, like, everything from, like, just the whole way it's written. Like, it touches on a lot of sensitive subjects, but it's a great story. I enjoyed the fuck out of it, and, you know, I'm fully gonna read that shit until it's done. But it's that. But at the same time, you can't go and try to want to be in that niche and then say, oh, we're only doing print, knowing that at this moment, I'm sorry, Tony, I agree with you, print's dying. Like, the music industry has pretty much figured this out. If you want your music to work, you got to get it on where iTunes, you know, fuck Spotify, all that good shit. That's how you're gonna make your music and be successful as a musician.
And you, as a musician, must remember the era of when the music industry resisted that bitterly until the end.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, I remember, fucking, who was it? God damn it, it's the rock and roll band. They were all...
Roy Orbison?
No. They were all up in a fucking storm against, Napster.
Oh, right.
Aerosmith? No, it wasn't Aerosmith.
Oh, no, Metallica.
Metallica, thank you. Metallica. Because they wanted to be able to sell their CDs. They were not cool with it being an all-digital format. That's when Napster... That whole thing happened with Napster. You seen the whole music industry wanted to fight it. And I understand, you know, making it to where your music isn't getting legally downloaded, and that system did have to be adjusted. That's fine. It has been. But even then, there were a lot of people that, yeah, they wanted to continue to put out CDs. And look, when I release my shit, you'll always be able to get an actual physical copy of it. Because that's how the fuck I am. I'll at least always do a limited run of whatever it is.
Yeah, and then vinyl came back. Own way. So vinyl is still around, but it's not like it was. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when vinyl was it. You know, that was it. It was vinyl or tape. And, you know, it was a very primitive time for music. You scratch your record, oh, no, I got to go buy another record. But the thing is, with the politics being inserted in this, and part of it is, you know, Meyer, who's sort of the Trump of Comicsgate, does these videos where he reviews comics. Now, I initially saw them, and I thought, you know, they're okay. The last thing I need is to watch a video about comics that I'm barely reading anymore. But I watched a couple of them. But the interesting thing was he talked about the politics in the comic. And his take was that it's too... left-leaning, it's hurting the story because of the ideology. And that is a legitimate gripe and a legitimate complaint. It is. Anyone who's seen some of these really hard... Now, it doesn't mean every Marvel comic and every DC comic is like that. It's mostly at Marvel.
And to cite examples of that, because I know exactly what you're talking about in Marvel, like they made the Falcon, Sam Wilson, the new Captain America. That was a political thing. Making Thor female was a political move. Miles Morales as Spider-Man was another political move. As opposed to them trying to introduce and bring in new characters that filled...
Yeah, which they used to do all the time.
Yeah.
They used to do this all the time. They would do a Marvel team-up, Spider-Man and the Tarantula, and I think the Tarantula was like a Latino superhero, and then... You know, they'd bring in new guys when it was fashionable. The problem with this recent spate is it was like flicking a switch. It was like, Iron Man, no, here's somebody else. Like, fans get pissed off if you change artists. I've been in this business for over 20 years. Fans can get pissed off at the slightest thing. I remember when Mike Grell was writing Green Arrow, and he was writing him really gritty and grim. It was one of the best comics out there at the time from DC. And then Grell left the book for whatever reason, and they put on Kevin Dooley, who the poor guy He was an editor at DC Comics.
Ooh.
And right away, he writes a story where some supervillain rolls into town named Shrapnel, and like Green Arrow has to fight him. And the fans went bananas. Like, what the hell, man? I'm reading this cool, grim story, and you give me the fucking Super Friends? What the fuck are you doing? They were mad. And Dooley was like slated for, I don't know, like 4 or 5 issues, and they like took him off like immediately and had to retool because it was like the fans were pissed and they were losing sales.
Like, look, Tony, I would hate to be the guy that has to follow Garth Ennis on fucking anything.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, fuck that.
I mean,
I'd be like,
who
dude,
wants
I'm
to
good.
follow that act?
I'm good. I'm gonna fucking walk away.
Yeah, or Alan Moore. Imagine being the guy to follow Alan Moore. I think it was Rick Veitch who had to follow Alan Moore when he quit the Swamp Thing. That and Rick is, I think it's Rick. Is it Rick or Rich? I don't remember. But he's good, and he had to follow Alan Moore. Like, boy, man, I didn't envy him at all. What an act to follow. But you're going to tell me that, oh, yeah, comic book fans, they're going to be okay if we change the main character to a girl. First off, let me say this, and this is a fact. More men read comics than women. Let me say it again. More men read comic books than women. Now, that I'm not including Japanese manga, because in America, Japanese manga tends to be more girls, because the designs appeal, I believe, to women. They have, the Japanese artists, they draw girls in designer clothes and current fashions. They draw tiny little cute animals. It's stuff that is feminine that women like. And the stories also tend to appeal more to women, because in Japan, the comics are completely different. Here, superhero comics, the majority of them are guys punching guys. Okay? And if it's not a guy punching a guy, it's some girl with a giant rack punching a guy. And we all know that. So, the idea that you're going to take, okay, we're going to come in and we're going to get women to read comics. That's like me going into a Victoria's Secret and saying, you know what? Not enough men come in here. Let's get a TV screen with Sports Center on it. Let's get some more pictures of half-naked women.
Look,
let's get some beer.
Hold on. Stop. Tony, don't say any more. You're going to give them a fucking bad idea, and then suddenly fucking Victoria's Secret is going to be running ESPN on their motherfucking, on their goddamn shops.
Yeah. So,
and
I would say to the women, the minority of women who are screaming about superhero comics, my advice to you is to do what many female creators do, is make their own fucking comics. Make comics that appeal to women. And don't sit around and go, well, my comics aren't selling as well as Spider-Man. Spider-Man's like 50 years old. It had a whole company behind it. If you want women in comics, get a woman, a rich woman, to front you. And make those IPs. And don't let any men work there. Go ahead. No one's stopping you from doing that. Okay? But the audience is clear in America. Superhero comics tends to be for boys. The best split I ever read was 63-37. 63 men, 37% women. And I think that is probably too high, or too high for the women. Most demographics I've read were split about 80-20 for most of the time I've been in the business.
Yeah, I could believe that. And I mean, even just looking at the response you get at comic book films, my 9-year-old, I can't get my 9-year-old to fucking watch Infinity War, even though it's like, I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck who disagrees or agrees with me. That is one of the best comic book films in the history of comic book films. It's only because they set it up for 10 years and were able to do something that has never been done before, as far as, collectively bringing a story together like that. But it did. It made it one of the greatest comic book films, period. Right? But even in those, you see a far higher percentage of men than you do women coming out to the flicks. So, yeah, man, I see your point in that. And I think it's odd people just want to fucking shift things like that. and like exactly be like, oh well, my character's not selling as well as Spider-Man, or and I know that's the reference you went to because you're old as shit, Tony. But the new reference nowadays would be my shit's not selling as well as Deadpool, because I really think that's like the best selling goddamn comic nowadays, which is funny because it makes me think back to shout out to fucking Comic Book University over in Indy. It's the most recent. That's the comic book store I go to if I do ever get a chance to. Dude that runs the place, he's like, man, I remember when Spider-Man wasn't cool, you know, and I collected it, and now he's like the shit. And he told me that a while ago, and then I sat there and thought, I was like, you know, I remember when I couldn't walk into fucking Walmart and buy a Deadpool shirt, you know, because nobody knew who the hell Wade Wilson was, and now it's blown up. I think people fail to understand that everything, like, things are going to be a slow build like that, as far as you're not going to be able to be like, oh hey, look, here's this new super character and they got this and this and this. Look, you're not going to have Spider-Man or Deadpool or X-Men numbers in any amount of quick time. You're going to have to slowly, progressively build that character, especially if you're not coming out of Marvel or DC. Then you've really got a fucking uphill battle on your hand.
Yeah, and look, there's nothing wrong with women in comics. Nothing wrong at all. And if you want to introduce a bunch of female characters, go ahead. But the audience is mostly male. And there are certain things guys want. They're different than women. Women and men want different things. Not all of them. Some of them want the same things. Some of them want the exact same things. But those people are rare. The vast majority of men and women like different things. People are weird, though. I'm at the end of the bell curve. I don't like sports. I don't watch sports. There's not one sport I watch. I could care less. If all organized sports disappeared tomorrow, I would care less.
Same here.
But there are people in this world who love sports. They love it. They can't get enough of it. Are you going to sit here and tell me that we have to somehow even it so there's an even number of men and women going to sports games? What are you, sick? It's a man thing. Yes, women like sports too. Some women like sports. Other women just tolerate it.
Tony?
Okay?
John thinks you're hating.
Who?
John in the chat. He thinks you're hating. He says you want to sleep with Wolverine. I think that's a bit extreme, John. Jesus Christ.
Who is John? Is what I'd like to ask. But
like I said, he's in the
man.
Comments on the YouTube. Well, first off, can I say, if we're talking the current Wolverine, man, X-23, I mean, she's over. She's legal, right? In the comics.
I don't know. I am not.
All right, we're not touching that then. Yeah, we're not touching that.
I just read. I bought the X-Men Gold. I said I would buy some comics to make sure I was a little current. So I bought X-Men Gold, and it was a story about the team and Storm, and it was a good story. Good story, good art. Pretty typical X-Men story. The X-Men are being, hunted because they're mutant kind, and they have to go to Africa because Storm's family's in trouble. They're all dead, and this weird mutant god character brought them back to life, but he controls them. And then Storm gets into a fight with him, and for some reason she's also Thor at the same time, which is part of it I missed. So I'm giving away. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So the end of the story is she kills the guy, essentially, or he disappears. You know how comics go, along with the help of the team. And then, but all the people he resurrected also disappear, and she gets to say goodbye to her family, and it's a sad moment, but, you know, the X-Men soldier on. It was a good story. Solid. Totally solid. Characters I recognize, even though I haven't bought a comic in a comic book store in like 20 years, I totally recognized everybody. It was Jean Grey's future daughter. It was Storm. It was Kitty Pryde. Like, all the classics.
Wait,
Nothing
you mean
wrong
Hope?
with that story at all. I got no problem with that story. What I do have a problem with is when you are running characters and you just replace the lead with nobody we've ever seen before. You know, look, I was pissed when they replaced the Hulk. Okay, the Hulk is David Banner. The Hulk is David Banner.
The Hulk is
replace
Bruce
with another
Banner,
guy.
you TV series watching. Like, he never went by David Banner in the comics, man. I know that's his middle name.
Bruce
in the
Banner, whatever.
Yeah, come on now. Look, you making me call you out on some comic nerdery, and you're the writer here.
Well, I didn't write the Hulk, obviously.
Fair enough.
So, you know, I want to see Banner. Like, okay, you replace him for a couple issues with Rick Jones because he becomes the Hulk for some reason. But, like, I don't want to see 2 years of, you know, another Hulk. That's a different comic. Launch a different comic. You've got the money. You want more content anyway. Launch a second Hulk comic if that's what you need to do. Don't ruin my comic by, like, replacing the main character. It doesn't matter who you replace. You can replace the Hulk with a cool cyborg pirate. It's still not the Hulk.
But do you ever think there may be a different motivation, at least in the case of Marvel doing that?
Well, I think, you know, Myers, again, he has some points. The Comicsgate guys have some points. That a lot of this is politically motivated. I would agree that some of it is, certainly. But ultimately, what motivates publishers and business people is money. So they jump on these trends and they go, make money on this trend. And that's an even worse case scenario than being ideologically motivated. Because the ideological zealots, well, they're just going to destroy themselves. The problem with a company that's going to exploit a trend, the trend always ends. And when it ends hard. It ends hard, and they milk every dime out of it until people go, I cannot see this trend ever again. We all remember the X-Files. They milked that trend and milked that trend, milked that trend. Then they brought the X-Files back. Yeah, how's it doing? Not so good. It went away again. Right?
Not so much. But let me propose this thought to you, right?
Go ahead.
Because when I said they're doing it for a different reason, what if they're doing it in the aspect of to help them in the films? Because that way it's already established in the comic that, oh, Thor turned to a female. So when Christopher Hemsworth's fucking contract runs up and he's like, dude, I'm done playing Thor, they can just be like, all right, we just need you to make an appearance in this movie and then we're turning you to a chick.
What I would say is maybe that could work, but my instinct tells me that's probably not going to work. My instinct as a writer, hearing that statement, like, you're going to turn the main character to a girl, that's not a superhero movie. There might be a movie in that, but I don't think it's a superhero movie with lots of action. I don't think you want a bunch of comic book fans seeing that. I don't think generally that's a change that comic book fans would endorse. You know, like if you turned Thor into a frog, like they did, that is kind of cool because he's a frog and the audience is male, and as males we can kind of go, yeah, that might be neat. He's a big frog and he's still going to be Thor, but he's a frog. When you change it to a woman, you're basically changing it to an entire different character, and you're going to get a different actress or a person to play Thor. So, you know, I don't think that comic fans would accept the actress who played Jane Foster to take over Thor. I mean, I don't think it would be a big movie. I just don't think it would be a hit. What's her name? I forget.
Because that's Natalie Portman, correct?
Natalie Portman, right.
Yeah, I don't
like Natalie Portman, because that's what they did in the comics, I think. I believe they had Jane Foster become Thor for a while or whatever. So, you know, Natalie Portman as Thor, I don't think they're going to buy it. I mean, and that's not a statement about women. That's a statement about what people like.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I hate women because they don't want to see Jane Foster become Thor. It's a statement of, I've read Thor for decades, and that sounds stupid. There's lots of things that you could pitch for Thor. That would just sound stupid.
Let me equate that properly for you. Check it out. It's because I like Interview with the Vampires, not fucking Twilight.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There's two different takes on vampires. One is, romantic, and it's love, it's soap opera. It's more geared towards young women. That's fine. I don't have any problem with Twilight. If people want to love Twilight, go ahead and love it. That's not my cup of tea. No skin off my back. I'm not standing outside the Twilight Theater going, this should be more manly. It's not my business. It's not meant for me. It's meant for someone else. I'm not the audience. Interview with a Vampire? That was pretty good. I mean, I thought it was okay.
I meant Dusk Till Dawn, though. I don't know why I said Interview with a Vampire. But just really more violent vampire films. You know what I'm saying, is what I was going with.
Yeah.
Like
my vampire movie.
Yeah, of I'm gonna rip your neck open and drink your blood and then fly away as a bat. Fuck off. I don't care about you. As opposed to
my vampire movie. My vampire movie is Near Dark. Like, that to me is an awesome vampire movie. That's the hillbilly vampire movie. It's great. Bill Paxton. Bunch of good old boys get turned into vampires. They sleep in motels in the day. They're real low budget hillbillies who drive around in an RV in the day. I mean, it's a fun take on vampires. It's extremely violent. That's the kind. But hey, if I took my girlfriend to go see Near Dark, there's a good chance she would go, that was kind of violent. I didn't like it. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having that reaction. And that doesn't make me sexist to theorize that a woman might have that reaction to a violent movie, because it happens every day. It doesn't mean all women hate all action movies. It just means there's a tendency that women like certain things, men like certain things. It's not the end of the world to acknowledge that. It's not the end of the world to acknowledge differences. Now, getting back to Comicsgate, because we're going all over the map here.
Oh man, look. First off, this is No Fucks Given Radio, and that's what we do. But hey, can I want to bring up this tweet. So I brought some tweets. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like, look, see, because this is another thing you brought up. Alt comics, right? This is from Comic Book Ben. As far as in reference to what you were talking about, it appears that all comics and their Comicgate supporters are hellbent on creating an alternate comic market with greater comic industry that they can do. It's called competition, but it appears the battle lines are being drawn, and this will be interesting to observe. So it's that whole thing about they're trying to create a separate market as far as with different stories, different types, but it seems like they don't have the ability to just be like, okay, let's all just put these comics out, and who likes, and they'll fucking read it, because like I'd like to think.
Yeah, but there's some other stuff going on too, in that one of the Comicsgaters, Myers, had a deal with Antarctic Press, and then because of the bad PR, Antarctic Press pulled out. Now Myers claims it's because Mark Waid called them, and Wade claims that he did call them, but his call didn't influence it, and they had already made up their minds. I would say that while Wade's statement is probably technically true, my take on it would be, and this is a total guess, I have no evidence or anything, my take is when a comic book heavyweight like Mark Waid starts throwing his weight around and his fans follow him down the rabbit hole, that Antarctic Press has to look at their bottom line and say, do I really want to get blasted by these anti-comic gators and lose my regular audience over this? And do I really want Mark Waid, a guy who I'd like to work with, to be my enemy? And the answer is no. So while Mark Waid may have not technically called them up and asked them not to publish Myers, I think his actions certainly had influence. Now, the other thing Waid said in his Facebook post, and I'm paraphrasing, was that he thought he should call Antarctic Press so that the Antarctic Press guy would know who he's getting into business with. And to me, that implies like Mark Waid's sitting around his house going, I wonder what other people, bad people, might be getting in business with Anarctic Press or independent comic publishers. I better make sure I check the internet to make sure everybody knows everybody else. That's not happening in my book, and that to me is that Mark Waid probably doesn't like Meyer, and he just got mad and made the call and used his influence to do what he could because he feels self-righteous and justified enough to do that. That's my take on it. I don't have any proof on it. I'm not saying it's true.
I mean,
that's my.
But no, Tony, you make a valid point, because I mean, Mark Waid does a lot. He does a lot of fucking work, and I'd assume he's not a guy that's got time to sit and be like, man, who's working with who in the comic book industry, so I can make sure nobody's fucking blah, blah, like, because no, that's some shit a schizophrenic fucking YouTuber does who's got nothing better to do than sit and actually fucking just be hateful and try and cause issues. I don't think Mark Waid is that kind of person, just because I don't honestly think he has time to be that kind of person. So I would agree with your assessment in that.
Yeah, so look, if anybody from Comicsgate or the Mark Waid, SJWs, or whoever is listening, I'd be happy to arbitrate between you two. Because, look, I'm not in Comicsgate. So I don't really have a horse in this race. I am a webcomic guy, and I left print a while ago. So, I got some print books, and I go to cons and whatever. But you guys really aren't doing anyone a service. All you're doing is hurting the fans. You're forcing the fans to choose between you and Comicsgate. And some of them are just going to walk away in disgust because they don't want to be bothered by this bullshit. They don't want to be called Nazis by the anti-SJ or anti-comic-gators, and they certainly don't want to be called cum dumpsters by the Comics-gators. So,
oh my God, I got to bring up the other tweet I grabbed just because of the statement you made. Because look, it's Quality Jollity. So excited to be part of the new comic book or Comicgate line of books, and it's a comic that's called White Power.
Oh, right, yeah. See, to me, that is a legitimate use of your comic skills to send up somebody you disagree with, right? Like, he didn't come out and say, oh, these guys are Nazis or whatever. He did a comic book cover and did a send-up of the Comics-gators, basically implying that they're racist. But he did it in like this fun way with a fake comic book called White Power. I saw that. That was pretty ingenious. But look, let's settle this guy because while you may think everybody in Comicsgate is just a hopeless racist who doesn't deserve to live, I have news for you. They will live, and they will continue on, but they're not going to buy your comics if you continue up this, I'll call it a self-defeating strategy, because ultimately, the only people who are going to lose is the entire comics industry when every comic book store is closed because half of them carried Comicsgate, and the other carried Marvel, and none of them can sustain the market anymore, and the whole thing just collapses from underneath us. That's going to happen anyway. We should be working together, to say, look, comics are an important medium. People have lots to say. Let them say it. If you don't agree with the politics of Meyer and Ethan Van Sciver, make a comic. Make a comic and show them, here, this is what I think of you in comic form. That, to me, is a valid thing. Do a whole comic book. Put it out. See how many people buy it. See how many people are actually concerned about this other than you. If it's a real concern on people, it'll sell great. If it's not, well, maybe you ought to think to yourself, am I making a big deal out of nothing? Meyer is entitled to his opinion. People are entitled to freedom of speech in this country still, thank God. You only have to look at what's happening in the UK and Canada with hate speech laws. People are going to jail in the UK for Facebook posts. Now, you may look at those Facebook posts and say, well, that was a very hateful Facebook post, but do you really think somebody should go to jail for it? Do you think people should be imprisoned in this country because they have extreme views? I'm not talking about people who are violent. I'm talking about people who say things you don't like. The freedom of speech was created for one reason. It was to protect all speech, not just some of it. Not just the speech you're like okay with, and not just the speech that fits in this neat little box of acceptable conversations, but all the speech. Now, that doesn't protect you from the consequences of your speech. So if you yell fire in a crowded movie theater, you're going to be in trouble if somebody gets trampled to death. Okay? And if Meyer is going to call people cum dumpsters, he shouldn't complain when they throw it up in his face in an argument on Twitter, which is what happened. Well, no, they brought it up. Let's see. He brought it up in his latest video.
But man, it's so weird, Tony, because that's how society is turning now. It's you fucking say something, and then no one thinks they have to accept the consequences of what they said. Like I know for a fact you never said that women shouldn't be superheroes, even though fucking John over here in the comments is saying as much. He did not say that, John. I promise. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
I'm sure. Look, there's going to be people on the internet that misquote you. They're going to take your words. They're going to turn them into whatever.
That's the other thing.
Those are very. First off, half of them are children, and I mean children in both sense. I mean children in age who have nothing to do, and children in the mental sense that they're just, they're angry and they want to take out their problems on somebody. They don't want to talk because they don't really have anything to say. That's part of the problem here. A lot of the people who get outraged and angry, they can't handle the discussion to begin with. That's why they're so angry. So if you tweak them, they go nuts. No, Meyer wouldn't have raised a dime for his comic if people didn't even go look at his videos. I mean, they're fine. I'm not saying they're all bad, but part of the interesting thing is his political take on the comics themselves. Now, some of this is trolling. He said in the latest video, he implied the guy he used to collaborate with couldn't get it up. So he was doing this voice and pretending like the guy was so wimpy he couldn't get an erection. That to me is a personal attack that completely undermines any message that he had. So it's dumb on his part. It's really dumb. It's fine to go and say, hey, listen, this guy's attacking me, and there's no justification for it or whatever you want to say. But when you make fun of his erectile dysfunction that he doesn't really have, obviously, or we don't know, then you give him ammo to go, see what an asshole he is? Even though the guy's insulting you. Like, I had a guy, I did, as you know, on my blog at superfrat.com, I do a column called Life Skills for Fanboys, and I did a column called In Defense of Comicsgate, which was me talking about Comicsgate based on the information I had known up to that point. And then I also did on the anti-war comic, The Great Comics War, where I showed, comic skaters and Marvel fighting it out, and the fans are in the battlefield in the middle getting killed. And that's a metaphor for what we're talking about here tonight. Now, my views on the Comicsgate controversy are pretty centrist overall, I think. I'm not trying to take sides here per se, but, to attack me is to drive me right into the arms of Comicsgate. Because what am I supposed to do? Yeah. If you make me person non grata, well, fuck, I need allies too. I'll go over to their camp. If you're going to attack me personally.
That's that whole enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yeah.
Yeah, like, what are you supposed to do? If you got no allies, you got nothing. So it's a poor strategy to just attack people. Now, that doesn't mean you have to tolerate bad behavior, but certainly on Twitter, behavior just means you block them. There's a button. Block them. Mark Wade got on part of his Facebook rant, and he said, you know, he was talking about using blockchains to block groups of people, and he had blocked a bunch of people, and some of them were Comicsgaters, and then some of them are like friends of Comicsgaters. So he's defending that, saying, well, you know, I'm very busy, and I don't have time to go through them all, and blah, blah, blah. Hey, listen, I get it. You're too busy. Why are you doing a Facebook post? Why are you involved in this at all? You're Mark Waid. Don't you have, like, real comics to write for real money? You know, I wouldn't be on social media if you paid me if I had Mark Waid's career. So, you know, to say, like, well, I had to do that. No, you didn't. I mean, Joe Rogan, he just goes on, he posts the latest show, and he says, I get right off. I don't even read anything. You could try that. Try not reading the responses. Then you won't get so mad. Then you won't get yourself in trouble. Not that Mark Waid's in trouble, per se. You know, and now he's caught up in this controversy. And once you get caught up in something like this and you take a side, well, you're kind of stuck there. Like, at what point, how is he supposed to back out of this now? He can't. You know? Where's his out to go, well, maybe I overstepped my bounds. Now, if he does that, Myers going to nail him to the wall in his next video. And vice versa. If Myers comes out and says, well, you know, maybe I overstepped my bounds. I shouldn't have used the word cum dumpster or whatever. The SJW will come down on him like a ton of bricks. So you guys need to just stop fucking talking to each other at this point. That would be my advice. Go to your corners and cool the fuck off. Maybe try just blocking each other and not talking to anybody. Because what are you going to get out of it if you just hate each other? Nothing.
That's a valid point, man. I mean, because look, in fucking hip hop specifically, it can be different. Like, beef is something that has been part of hip hop for a long fucking time. I mean, you know, going back to fucking East Coast, West Coast beef and all that. And I mean, it continues throughout this day. So that's something in music that, or well, specifically in rap, it's always kind of been there. But it's not necessarily means it's a healthy thing. Fuck, people have died over that shit. And I mean, literally got fucking shot. My mom was right across the fucking street when Tupac got shot. And that was all over some beef dumbass bullshit, right? So that can happen. I don't see why you would perpetuate it, though, if it at least doesn't have something positive. I mean, do you think that they're both looking at this going, hey, maybe if we do this, you know, we'll catch a little bit of buzz and somebody will go buy this comic or this piece of merch or some such nonsense?
Some of it's that. I think what's happening now, I think right now it's at its apex and it's spiraling out of control. Like, Myers got really upset when they went after Peter Simeti at Alternate Comics because he felt, and I think this is rightly so, that Peter was like, you know, just a nice guy who'd gotten away, and now he's collateral damage. And where's the apology coming from the people who nearly ruined his business or may have ruined it? I don't know. On the other side, you know, Mark Waid has an image. He probably shouldn't have stepped in this in the beginning. And now, to back out of it, you know, you got a bunch of very emotional people on both sides. And on his side, they're definitely emotional. I mean, I think they're emotional on both sides. But, you know, his followers, you know, they're not going to take just, well, I've changed my mind. I said too much. So what I would suggest, again, you guys want to come together and we'll do a peace summit just like the hip hop guys did, a comic book peace summit, and we'll try to bury the hatch, and then you could apologize and, you know, not really apologize, but sort of just agree that this is over and then go your merry ways and stop trashing each other online, you know?
Yeah,
I think I tried to tell you, but I got distracted.
Like you said, they'll at least come to some kind of conclusion that it's not detrimental to either of them, but it's not something that's negative as a whole to the comic book industry, and hopefully can move things forward in far more of a positive manner, as opposed to fucking, you know, the snake trying to eat its goddamn tail.
Yeah,
because that's what's happening here, as far as I see, man. Really, and everything I researched into Comicgate is this is the snake eating its tail. Because if you've got everybody just saying, oh, don't buy that book. Oh, well, don't buy this book. Oh, well, don't buy that book. Then eventually, like you said, nobody's going to buy any book because they're like, this is fucking annoying. I've got these fuckers telling me I shouldn't buy this. I got these fuckers telling me I shouldn't buy this. So fuck it. I'm going to go watch a movie, you know?
I go to different comic book stores. One of the stores I was in, I was talking to the guys who, they work at the store, and there were a few fans there. And I mentioned Comicsgate, and they kind of knew what I was talking about. This was when it just had started. And ultimately, that was their attitude at the end of it. Like, yeah, I don't need this.
Yeah.
I don't need this in my life. I don't need this stress. You know, this shit all came out in the 2016 election. You know, people who are super political, and I'm super political, man. I do the anti-war comic. I've been doing that comic for like 8 years. You know, I'm totally down the rabbit hole in the world of politics. But it's like, and let me say this for the comic fans. You remember the death of Superman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
he should have stayed that way. Superman, I'm just saying. He could have stayed dead. I'd have been cool with that. I'm not a fan. I'm sorry for anyone out there that is. It's just that motherfucker. There's so many things about that. That's a whole nother fucking episode, Tony. It is.
We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
So during the death of Superman, prior to death of Superman, you couldn't convince people that comic books were worth anything. After the death of Superman, everybody got into comics. It was ridiculous. You couldn't convince people that comic books were worth nothing. Every comic book they bought after the death of Superman just about was probably some of the most worthless comics ever printed because that was like the peak of the printing time. And now you go to yard sales or flea markets, you'll see a guy with comics. He'll have comics from the 90s at like $5 a pop. And you'll be like, what? I'm not buying this for $5. What are you, insane? This isn't worth $5. And he'll be like, oh, no, man, they're comics. They're worth money. Like, good luck with that.
No, sir. But, you do not know the market you are trying to sell within. Have a good day.
Right. But they were the people outside of it. And that's the same thing with politics. You had all these people, you know, who didn't give two flying fucks about politics and were basically on autopilot, figuring, Hillary would be the next president, no big deal, whatever. And then, shocker or shockers, Donald Trump, of all people, wins. Now they've lost their goddamn minds. Now every day. Do you know how many people I had to block on Twitter that I used to know that they spend all day sending me CNN clips like I don't know what CNN is? Here's this secret site called CNN where I found this about the president. Imagine my surprise. It's like, dude, I see the news way more than you did. I was protesting the Bush war long before you showed up. So cool your jets. I think I know a little bit more.
Wait, Tony. There was a war on Bush. Is that why all the women shave nowadays? Sorry.
But you know,
it was just way too easy, Tony. I had to hit it.
But the whole thing is like, you can't just look at these things and make these giant pronouncements of I'm not going to do this, or you're a bad person, or you're this, or you're that, based on like a 10-minute Googling of a subject. You have to drill down into it a bit. You have to read some articles, know your shit a little bit. And look, I've been making comics for 20 years. I've been going to conventions for 20 years. This Comicsgate thing is completely unique in that it's totally about politics. Now, similar things have happened in the past, and this was what I was going to tie into Vertigo, right? So at Vertigo, they launched the Vertigo line, and it was very successful. And for a while, it seemed to be great, but then something changed. And the Vertigo line, in my opinion, seemed to get very female-centric. Now, there wasn't anything wrong with that, except that all the stories seemed to follow a very similar pattern. And the pattern was like, white males are bad, religion is stupid, everything about like Western civilization was awful. And they would do stories like this, like Shade the Changing Man. You know, he had these stories. But early on, it wasn't too bad because it wasn't like they were doing their own thing, and it was successful. You know, college students like this kind of stuff because it felt kind of intellectual and cool to read comics about superheroes who were depressed, you know? Like Shade the Changing Man, he was always depressed. And the women in the comic really drove the story, and he was just kind of there.
Wait, no, fuck that. Deadpool did depressed superhero before anybody.
Well, you know, the Vertigo line, though, was this attempt to do the kinds of comics that they're trying to now cram into superhero comics. So DC showed you here, look, you can have both. You can have this superhero world where guys are punching each other, and you can have this other world that appeals more to women and older people. And look, you know, Marvel had one of the most successful female comics of all time. It was called Barbie, and it was hugely successful. And I would go to cons, and there would be an artist for Barbie. There'd be a line of girls around the block to get their comic book signed. They loved it. They loved it. Now, you might look at that and say, well, that's a terrible thing to, you know, show little girls and women, blah, blah, blah. It was their comic. They love it.
You know what? Can I say, this shit pisses me the fuck off. Everybody wants to talk about, let's be fucking equal, let's end sexism, and then they want to be like, you know, females are held to a completely unrealistic standard. You want me to look like Barbie? Fuck you. You want me to look like Captain America? What the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some of that in there too. You know, I saw the guy who did Sonic the Hedgehog. That was a huge comic for kids 6 and under. You know, they loved it. They would wait in line. It was crazy. They'd have a line of 6-year-olds that, you know, it was like 56-year-olds in line with their parents waiting to get this guy who I'd never heard of sign the comic. Archie was the Archie comics, not now, but back in the day, they were for really young kids. And that split was about 50-50 because those kids were so young, you know, they hadn't gone through puberty yet, you know? So guys and girls enjoyed Archie. I read Archie when I was a little kid. I mean, you know, it was just fun, goofy, you know, harmless fluff. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. But the world is changing, and rather than make an enemy out of everybody, we need to be friends, okay? And we need to just recognize, look, we're not all going to agree on shit. You know, one of the things I did in my life, I spent 15 years being in improv groups, right? So when you're in an improv group, it's like being in a band. You're with a bunch of creative people, and they all have opinions. And when you want to, like, do a show or you want to advertise a show, you know, it's tough because you can't get everybody to agree. My improv group argued for a year and a half over the name of the improv group. Okay? We were called Next Line Improv. The new name we came up with, Next Line Improv, because we couldn't agree on a new name. We went back to the old name after a year and a half of arguing. So that's the way people are. They argue, okay? And you have to tolerate that. You have to tolerate that on the internet. When somebody says some stupid shit on the internet, the thing to do is ignore it. You don't feed the trolls. It's the number one rule on the internet. Don't feed the trolls.
But I have to just occasionally, Tony, at least for me, occasionally I like to feed the trolls a troll because that's fucking hilarious. It
can get you into trouble. Look, I used to do that all the time. In the days of message boards, I would get into arguments with people, but ultimately what they would do is go, if I actually got them backed into a corner on a point, their go-to move was to go, oh, I was just kidding. I was just messing with you. Bye. And so you never win an argument on the internet. That's like the best you could possibly get, is that the guy's just going to bail and pretend like he was kidding the whole time and just jerking you around. And in a way, he was. And you were wasting your time. So instead of wasting all our times, you know, writing replies on the internet and tweeting and doing all this stuff, how about we all just make comics? how about we all just agree to stop attacking each other personally, and, you know, that it's fine to attack the comic and not the person, okay? So I think Meyer ought to dial it back, not have personal attacks in his reviews. It's perfectly valid for him to, however, critique the politics of a comic. And I think Mark Waid and Bill Sienkiewicz, look, you guys are passionate guys too. I get it, but Comicsgate is not a hate group. You can keep saying it all you want, but that sounds hollow because the KKK is a hate group. That's a hate group, okay? The KKK killed people. You know, the Nazis are a hate group. They've killed people. So I don't think Comicsgaters are going to kill anybody, all right? They're going to say some things, maybe one or two of their fans is going to get out of hand. Several of your fans have gotten out of hand too, Mark. We all have it. I had a guy, I told you about the column in the comic I posted about Comicsgate. I had a guy comment on it, and first he sent me a link. I won't say his name. I don't want to out him. I'm not looking to get into a fight with him. But he sent a link. He said, "This is what I said about Comicsgate." And I thought, oh, that's cool. Let me see. And I clicked it, and, you know, he had his opinion on it. Whatever, fine. Then he sent me a second comment, and the second comment was, I'm going to, I'm paraphrasing, I'm going to defame you in the comment section and dox you. And then I thought, whoa, I don't know if this guy's kidding or what. I don't know who this is. So, I reported him to Reddit, and that's the end of it. I didn't respond to him. Now, I could have said, hey, you don't know who you're dealing with, and blah, blah, blah. And, I've done that in the past to people who have gotten it on with me in my comment section or whatever. But ultimately, it's a zero return for you, you know?
I just got to say that if you're out there on the internet, and I don't rightly give a fuck who you are. I don't give a fuck if you're in the comic book industry, films, music, whatever. And I don't give a fuck what capacity you're in it. And you're threatening to dox somebody. Like, I'm going to dox you online. Do yourself a favor. Move out of your fucking mom's basement. And shut the fuck up. Alright? Like, find somebody more important to pull docs on. Like the fucking CIA. And realize the bullshit they pull on us every fucking day. Like, that's far more important than wasting your time on the internet talking about, I'm gonna dox somebody cause it'll make me feel better. No, you're trying to make yourself feel better by making everything worse for everybody. If that's what the fuck you are, then like I said, move your ass out of your fucking mom's basement and do everybody a favor and shut the fuck up. I mean, seriously.
That's what, yeah. And by the way, just a little technical issue. You're drowning a little bit. You told me to tell you that.
Oh, I'm drowning. Hold on, guys.
But
Tony.
Regardless.
God damn it. Hold on, Tony.
Are you okay?
Oh, no, I'm fine.
I just didn't realize something. See?
Tell me we haven't been recording.
We haven't been recording.
What happened?
No, hold on.
Are we on the air?
Yes.
Okay. I'll keep talking.
When I'm drowning like that, I gotta do something to make sure I can breathe proper, and then I gotta do something else to make sure it ain't like echoey as fuck. And my producer, aka Shell, my wife, has already headed upstairs, so she wasn't there to just. So it took me longer than 5 seconds when normally that's all.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries.
Normally only take 5 seconds when the producer's in the house, but she left.
Well, you make an excellent point with this, that people are trying to tear other people down to make themselves feel better. And I can relate to that because I was one of those people. And I'm not afraid to admit it. I feel bad that I was one of those people, but I used to be that way. And I felt the world owed me something, and if I didn't get it, fuck you.
You know who else? Hey, wait. You know who else thought that? And I don't mean to, I'm not putting this on you, Tony, because you said you used to be that person. You're not anymore. But someone else who felt that way was Adolf Hitler.
Thanks for that comparison. That's
not to you.
I really appreciate
you said
that.
You're not like that anymore, so that doesn't count towards you. But for people that are currently like that, I'm saying that's,
look,
that's what he did.
Everybody, I think, to some extent. You know, a friend of mine once said the greatest quote in the world, which I thought was the greatest quote in the world, everybody's an ass. And it's
Very
true. You know, everybody at some point in their lives, you're an asshole. And it may not be that you intend to be an asshole, but yeah, probably you did at some point in your life. Probably at some point in your life, you just said, fuck it. You were mean to a waiter. You told somebody off. You told somebody off on the internet. You got away with it. And fine. Whatever. Sometimes that happens. And sometimes you just get mad and you do something stupid. We have to have a society in which we forgive people for that. Now, I'm not talking that, you know, if there's some seriously racist guys running around who are white nationalists, they're not making one mistake. They're making many, and that's different. But, you know, somebody who gets on the internet and they're angry and they say something they shouldn't have, it shouldn't ruin their entire life. They shouldn't lose their job and their career over it. Yeah, maybe they should get chastised socially. Maybe, you know, maybe there should be a threat of like, hey, man, you keep doing that shit, something bad's going to happen to you in terms of like, you know, socially, not in terms of like your livelihood. You know, I'm certain that the wheel's going to turn with this stuff at Marvel Comics, and when, you know, the super diverse super friends are out of vogue, and, you know, somebody at the company says, we don't do that stuff anymore. Let's just do, you know, all our classic stuff. You know, do you really want to be the guy who was like the face of that? You don't, because then they're not going to hire you. Then you're going to be like, you're old news, dude. Yeah, we used to do that diversity stuff back when it was selling. Now it's not selling. We're trying to build the company up again. Sorry, we don't need you. So, you know, it's going to come back to haunt, I think, some of these people, and they're going to regret, geez, did I really shoot myself in the foot here? I mean, look, Myers, he's got some valid points, and you have to give him that, just like Trump has some valid points. All right? I know people don't want to hear that. Oh, my God, you're defending Trump.
Even a psycho can be right occasionally, all right? I'm just saying. Look, if I hand a pedophile to Michael Myers, he's going to do the right thing with that pedophile. Does that mean Michael Myers does the right thing with anyone else you hand to him? No.
That was a weird mix, but okay.
I do
mean,
that, man. I'm
like,
kind of weird, Tony. Sorry.
I never met Joseph Stalin, but I'm sure he would acknowledge that the sky is blue.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, it can't be that bad. People aren't, like, so evil that you can't deal with them at some level. Yeah, there's a few people away at the end of the bell curve. They're psychopaths and murderers and whatever. I'm not talking about those people. Most of those don't work in comics, I'm assuming. So, you know, we can come together here. Mark Waid, Bill Sienkiewicz, Richard Myers, Ethan Van Sciver. Let's have a summit, okay? Let's have a comic book peace summit. Imagine all the positivity that could come out of that, right? We set it up at a comic book convention, okay? We get up on a stage, and we all try to be super positive, and we talk it out. At the end, you hug. You might have to apologize a little bit. You might have to say, hey, maybe I said some things. So what? What's it going to do? At the end of the day, maybe we could all make a comic together. Wouldn't that be nice? And you put out the Peace Summit comic, and you talk about nothing about everything in the comic is just positive about comics. It has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with anything else. We're not trying to get up on one another. We're just trying to make comics. I think it would be a big help. We did a comic like that. We didn't have the same situation in the world of webcomics, but we did a group comic. What the hell was it called now? I don't even remember. But my friend who does Sluggy Freelance, Pete Abrams, pulled it together. He was in it. I was in it with Super Frat. A few other creators. I think Jenny Breeden was in it. Was she in it too? A few other webcomic creators. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was called Webcomic. I don't remember. God, it was so long ago. But we sold it. You know, we sold it at San Diego. You know, trying to get people into webcomics. Like, hey, we're all the new guys. We're webcomic guys here. So wouldn't it be great to say, let's bury the hatchet here. Let's make some comic books about peace and positivity, and come together. I think that would be, you know, a big seller, and we could say, all right, all this is over. Fans, to your neutral corners, please. No more calling anybody a Nazi. Nobody call anybody a cum dumpster. No more personal attacks. We're going to leave this all behind, move forward, and make comics. Who wants to do that? Okay.
I'd love to see that. And I think with this, it's the main problem that I see is that fucking everyone has lost the aspect of it's about the story, right? Like,
yeah,
that's
sure.
That's
I
what
would agree
it's
with
supposed
that.
to be about. Like, how good of a story are you presenting, right? And the story as a whole, like all the characters within it, the fucking, you know, from the main character to the dude that was in that one page one time and had one line. Like, was that appropriate for the story? That's all that fucking matters, all right? The race, the sex, the religion, that shit you can use in the story, but I think people are having a problem with making that a main story plot as opposed to making it something that impacts the plot of the story itself.
Well, I would say that ideology is not a story, okay?
Yeah.
It's just not.
No.
You know, if you're going to do a story about race, it's a story about race. There are some superhero stories about race. You can make that happen, but if that's going to be like, let's talk about a character like Black Lightning, okay?
Oh,
Black
God.
Lightning is the character's name, and he's black. Black Vulcan, same thing, right? It's like, why did you call him that? Like, what does this race have to do with his superpower? It's, you know, that was at a time, I think those characters were created at a time. They're trying to be more inclusive, and look what they end up doing anyway. So, you know, we can do better than that. We can say, hey, let's all just be superheroes.
Let me just ask real quick, because first, I totally agree with you. Ideology is not a story. It can be something that furthers a plot in a story, but it's not a fucking story. But why in the holy fucking hell do you think of all characters DC had to launch a TV series with, they were like, hey, you know what? Black Lightning.
Well, I don't know. They had the Milestone characters, which, by the way, some of my favorite characters. I collected all the Milestone stuff. I love the Blood Syndicate. I think the Blood Syndicate could have been a great movie, great TV series. I wish they had done it. I would have loved to have written that book. It was awesome. It was for those of you who don't know, it was about a gang in a city, and all the gangs got sprayed with this gas, and all of them died except for like one member of every gang. So the Blood Syndicate is like this misfit gang of like who become kind of superheroes, but they're kind of not because they're ex-gang members, and like one or two of them become the villains, and then the rest of them are like fighting them. But it was a really cool story, and there was a lot of comics that came out of Milestone. They did the character was basically a black Superman. I forget his name, and then they did Static Shock, which ended up being a cartoon.
I remember that.
And I think there was one other. But, it was a good... And that came out of Milestone, which was like an imprint of DC, back when DC was doing all these imprints. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I know a little bit behind the scenes about the Black Lightning thing that I can't really talk about, but, you know, my response to that is probably, again, it's all about these trends, you know. They tend to follow the trends. You know, yeah, there are real creative people that work in movie studios and TV studios, and some of them get to do awesome things. Lightning, done. You know, that's kind of the cynicalness of Hollywood, in my view. I mean, I've worked with guys in Hollywood, so believe me, you think the Comicsgaters and the SJWs are bad? Holy shit. Nothing compared to the people in the movie industry. So cutthroat, you cannot imagine. You cannot even begin to imagine how cutthroat the movie industry is.
Man, no. See, I can. Tony. Only
Well, right, you're in the music industry.
Well, not even that. I mean, in part because of that, but also that if you're in any form of entertainment industry, I mean, even if it's just this, you know, us running the radio over here, No Fucks Given Radio, where, you, like I said, you can go to nofucksgiven.com, check out everything, like, subscribe, click that notification button so you know when we going live with all the crazy shit we do, because we do plenty over here for all you fuckers out there listening. But in that aspect, man, when you're in an entertainment industry, there's a shitload of people trying to do what you're doing and be really successful. I mean, like, you know, Stan Lee, Tom Cruise, fucking, you know, Mel Gibson, Steven Spielberg, fucking, you know, Eminem, fucking Beatles, like that kind of successful. Like that's the dream, I think, for most people that get in any form of entertainment, is they really want to fucking be able to make it, right? So in that becomes a dog-eat-dog world, because you're looking at the motherfucker in front of you going, if he wasn't there, I'd be one spot closer to where I want to be. You know, this is just what I've noticed. I just fucking ride my goddamn wave, and I'm trying to make a motherfucking living, and I hope all you fuckers out there watching, listening to this shit, whether it's my music or what we do over here at No Fucks Given Radio, dig this shit and appreciate that we're just trying to put forth thoughts from all kinds of different perspectives. You know, that's me, but that's how you see most people looking at it.
You would think so. Unfortunately, I think there are people who they've got this idea now that it's their responsibility to silence people that they don't agree with. And that is a disaster, because the moment you start to silence anybody, even somebody who's totally repulsive, and you could say Meyer's totally repulsive if you want, but the moment you silence him is the moment you create a situation where other people are going to get silenced, and eventually it's going to be you. Doesn't matter that you're on the right side of history at that particular moment, but if you start making the rules, okay, we're going to silence this guy. We're going to ruin his career. We're going to we're going to make sure he never works again. We're going to keep going after him. Like, that way lies death for everyone. And I'm not joking. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. When you decide to silence people, you're basically sentencing them to death. You know, like, what is Louis C.K. supposed to do now? Is he supposed to die? Is he supposed to crawl under a bridge and die somewhere? He came back and he did comedy, and people were, like, losing their damn minds. He's a comedian. This is what he does. Now, you could hate his whole deal, and you could not go. And some people say, well, he showed up and nobody knew. Okay, leave the audience. Were you tied to the fucking chair? I don't think you were.
And if you really just want to let him know, just be like, hey, Louis, fuck you, and then walk out, you know? But beyond it, like, nothing beyond a fuck you to that dude is in any way, shape, or form necessary. Like, if you can't let it go at that, you need therapy, motherfucker.
Yeah, and if you can't be a grown-up, I mean, this is what grown-ups do. If somebody walks into the room in a party and you don't like that person, you don't, like, go over there and lecture them about all the things you don't like about them. You either go, all right, I got to put up with this asshole, or you go, I'm leaving. And you leave. That's what a grown-up does. That's your only two choices in grown-up land. You know? If you do anything else, you're an asshole. If you go up to the guy and start screaming at him, you're a fucking asshole, because you're starting something. The person who starts it is usually the asshole.
Well, wait then. You know, why the fuck does everybody call me the asshole? I don't usually start shit. I'm just usually the one that laughs in the dude's face that yells at me like, yeah, dude, sure.
I don't know. But, you know, these guys need to come together, because the comic industry, look, we're talking about the biggest story to hit comics in I don't know how many years, and we got one guy in the chat room calling us out every other sentence.
John don't like you. Tony, I don't know what you did to offend him, but
I don't care, John. I don't care.
You know
You're
what?
free to like me,
I'll tell
unlike
you,
me all you want.
For John, man, because I know John's definitely into the underground music scene. I'll tell you, for anyone that's into the underground music scene, this whole comic book thing, what I would equate it to is, well, right now it would be the whole fucking Machine Gun Kelly and Eminem going at one another, and everybody's arguing, blah, 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 blah. You know, just enjoy what comes from that. Don't fucking start hating somebody you don't even know because he has an opinion on it, right? Just enjoy,
the whole thing.
Just enjoy.
The whole
and
thing could be
that's
fake.
what this Comicgate is, man. It's motherfuckers trying to compete against one another, and every fan wants to have an opinion, and then suddenly a fan from the United Kingdom is pissed at a person in Canada, who's pissed at a person in the U.S., who's arguing with somebody at Mexico, who's screaming at someone else in Russia, who's having a fucking argument with someone on the exact same subject in Japan, and then all of a sudden they all fucking hate each other. That's what this is doing.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you another story, and this sort of is borderline the comics, but not really. Have you heard what happened to Will Wheaton?
Vaguely,
So
here's
the deal. Will Wheaton is on Twitter. He's got I don't know, millions of followers, right? And he decides, and he's hardcore left guy, SJW all the way. So he decides that because Twitter didn't ban Alex Jones from Twitter, he tells the Twitter guys, the Twitter universe, I'm shutting down my account, and in 30 days I'm going to leave if you don't ban Alex Jones. And I'm taking my followers with me, and I'm moving to a platform called Mastodon. Now, Mastodon is like Twitter. My understanding of it is, my limited understanding, Mastodon is to Twitter, but it's very left-leaning. And then there's another one called Gab, but he wouldn't go to that one because that is super right-wing. That one's like super right-wing. So he goes on Mastodon, like the 30 days ended, I guess, and he decides to go on Mastodon. Well, things didn't go so well for him. Apparently, he said something that was construed by the populace there as transphobic or homophobic. I don't know what he said. I didn't read it. I didn't drill down that far. But now he's been accused of that. He's very upset, and he's being kicked off of Mastodon, apparently, or banned for time or whatever. So, you know, he's gotten a taste of his own medicine. And this is exactly what's going to happen to everybody out there who's screaming to silence the Comicsgaters. That is what will happen, you know? It's karma, and we don't want that, okay? The Comicsgate guys, yeah, you don't like them. You know what? I don't believe in marrying my first cousin, but Jerry Lee Lewis had some good music, and he married his first cousin, from what I understand.
Damn, Tony. You went deep with that one.
Yeah. So, I could separate the art from the person who made it, you know? It's not like he was singing songs about marrying your relatives. So, you know, these guys are making comics. They specifically said they're trying to make them non-political because, and they'll probably be a little political just because, that's what happens. But, you know, they're not going to be like this heavy-handed message. They're trying to get away from that. So there's no reason you can't just let them exist. Let them have their anarchic deal. That's exactly what you wanted them to do. Because if they had failed and you hadn't done anything, they could blame no one but themselves. Now they can blame you, Mark Waid. Now everybody can blame you. Now you've taken on the entire thing. If Comicsgate fails, they could say, well, we only failed because of you. And just like everybody who apparently worked on the female Ghostbusters was like, well, it wasn't our fault. It was a great movie, but, you know, these fans, they hated the trailer, so it's all on them. You don't want to give them that ammo. You want to let them put out whatever they want, and then if it fails, it's on them. And you'd have to believe, if you truly believe these guys are Nazis, and they're going to put out Nazi comic books, and they're going to somehow be successful, I think you're living in a dream world.
Hey, now I will say, there probably is a small portion of the world that would be very much down with those comics. Let's be real fucking
Very
honest
small.
here, Tony.
Come on.
I'm not
They're not
saying
gonna-
I'm not saying it's a large. I'm not saying it's enough to fucking support the making of a comic book, because it's not. Let's be real fucking clear. The portion of people you would get to read, because I'd like to think that most people that are ignorant enough to be fucking Nazis are ignorant to the point where they couldn't even comprehend a whole fucking comic book, because it takes a bit of a brain. I don't give a fuck what anybody says, all right? But there would be a small portion that would want to read that. Well, like, I don't know, maybe 5-10 people. Well, but there would be more people. There would be like 100 people that would want to read it. There'd be like 10 people that would be capable of it.
Yeah, like, look, I'm old enough to remember the 70s when real racists were walking around. These guys would drop the M-bomb, oh, no problem. These guys didn't like black people at all. And sometimes I had to work for one, and he was the most racist guy I ever met. He was dropping M-bombs all day long. I was working at the amusement park, and this guy was my boss, and I had to put up with his shit because he was my boss. What was I going to do? I guess I could have quit, but I needed the money. So I was in high school. Yeah. What did I know?
Everybody's got to eat.
So, yeah. I mean, look, I guess I could have quit and been the 18-year-old who went home to his parents and said, I quit my job because my boss is racist. I guess I could have been that guy. He just would have hired another guy, and it wasn't like he made racism where I worked. He just was an auto mechanic for an amusement park. So he had his really racist views. But you know what? Even though he was like super racist, his best friend at the amusement park was a black guy. So go figure. I don't know. I don't know why the black guy was his friend. He was the most racist guy I ever met. But they were friends, or at least associates. I don't know if they were that good friends, really, but I kind of find it hard to believe they were that tight if he was that racist. But, man, that guy would go on and on and on. And the thing about racists is those guys, they want validation. They need it. They crave, like, you to, like, nod your head in agreement, like, oh, yeah, you don't like black people, too. Like, they're dying for people to do that. And, like, when you look at them like, Jesus Christ, dude, what is wrong with you? They immediately, like, back away from you like, oh, you don't get it. And they're living in a world of delusion. They're ignorant motherfuckers.
I'll tell you, I think the problem is there was a point in this world where there was way too much hate. And we tried to make it a bit more politically correct. And now everyone's taking that politically correct dial, and every hand is on it, just trying to turn it farther. Like, no, you can't say any of this shit because that offends and then these 5 people, and this offends those 10 people, and oh, if you say that, you'll offend this one person over here, so we can't, and we can't, and we can't, and we can't. And there's a certain degree, for real, like, just be a decent human being. I don't give a fuck how many times you swear. Let's be clear. If I ain't made that clear by the fact that I run No Fucks Given Radio, I don't know how the fuck else to do it. I use the word fuck fairly proficiently. Hell, I'm even a fan of the word cunt. It's an awesome word. The word cunt is such an awesome... Like, if you're ever having an argument, Tony, and you just want to end it, just be like, listen, you cunt, I'm done. And they'll be like, you just called me a cunt?
Well, it'll be interesting to see you in Australia because apparently they drop that word all the time.
Okay, I'm in America, in like Australia or the UK.
Yeah, no, America's different.
Yeah.
But,
in America or the UK, that word ain't gonna work.
I read a meme about it, and it was just interesting because, like, the meme was about calling your mates cunts, and everybody's a cunt, basically. And that's how often they use it in Australia, so it's kind of funny you mention that. But, yeah, it's like, look, we're not all going to get along here, and people are going to have arguments, but it doesn't have to get personal. It doesn't have to get this mean and ugly. And you know, the lessons of the past. Like, I remember growing up, right? So, like, you come out of the '60s, all these hippies slowly start to become, you know, powerful in media or whatever. And they had cool messages in the beginning, and it was like peace, love, and understanding, right? And that was cool. But they also had some other messages that got gobbled up in it. And part of the reaction to the hippies eventually was, so sick of the peace and love. You're so pacifist and wimpy. We don't like that, you know. And then you had the 80s, right? And the 80s were kind of a reaction to that culturally. You had Reagan come in, Mr. Swagger himself, and, you know, people in the 80s were like, yeah, man, this is the way things should be. And we're all in suits, and we're in the 80s guys, and we got loud hair and fashion styles and all that bullshit, right? So then for a while, that's cool. But, like, the people who were still kind of hippie-ish, they ended up being, like, in the 90s, kind of like your goth, nihilist kind of types, where it was like, okay, if we can't have peace, love, and understanding, then I guess life doesn't matter. So fuck it. And they were still kind of into all, like, the identity politics of it, but a lot of it was like, fuck it all. Everybody's going to die anyway. And then in the 2000s, it sort of bounced back in this weird way where it became identity politics. And the thing is about the left side of politics, for a long time, they fought very valiantly to bring things up for people of color, as they say, and, you know, gay people. And they won. And they got that. But it's just like what happened to Twitter. When they kicked off all the conservatives, the bar kept going up and up. And everybody near the bottom of the bar suddenly got targeted. So guys who, like, you know, were just regular conservatives are now being called Nazis. Like, I follow all the anti-war stuff. The anti-war guys got cut off on Twitter. Like, they had to fight to get back on the Twitter. Like, these guys are the most peaceful people you'll ever meet. They weren't hippies, but they were anti-war activists. And Twitter cut them off because it's like, well, the algorithm says you're saying some bad stuff or whatever.
The algorithm says. We fucking rely way too much on goddamn algorithms written by people that have probably no touch with what real society is. I swear.
Well, you know, they're in Silicon Valley, and to some extent they're isolated from the real problems of the rest of the world. Yeah, it's nice to think that everybody can get along, but sometimes they don't. And just because two people don't get along and they're not the same color doesn't mean it's a racial thing. It just could mean that somebody's being an asshole. So this is the problem with, like, you know, this baker who made a cake in Colorado, or he would make a cake in Colorado, because he wouldn't make the gay cake, right? And libertarians, we talk about this all the time because this was a question Gary Johnson sort of fumbled on. And he said, you know, whatever he said, I forget. But, you know, the whole thing about the cake is, like, you have to really drill down and think, well, if he has to make the cake, you're forcing him to make the cake at gunpoint. And if he doesn't make the cake, well, he's an asshole. So you have to decide what kind of world you want to live in. Do you want to live in a world where the government comes to you and says, hey, you got to make this cake. I don't care that you don't agree with this person's politics or beliefs or whatever. You got to make it. So I don't think you do. I mean, I don't think the people, you know, in Wade's camp want to be forced to make a comic that's about Comicsgate. I don't think they want to be forced to do that because they have to get equal time or something. They want to make whatever they want to make. And people should be allowed to make whatever they want and do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anybody, as long as they're not hurting other people's property. Everybody should do what everybody else wants, including saying stupid shit. So
yeah.
You just got to tolerate it.
I do, Tony, I fully agree with you in that. And in reference to that case in Colorado, I actually seen recently where, there was a Supreme Court and fucking they said it was good. He didn't have to do it. And I agree. Look, you should not, like, if you own your own business, like, and somebody comes to you and is like, hey, I want to do this. And you're like, I don't fucking want to because I don't agree with that personally for whatever reason, whether it's religious, politically, or just your fucking moral sense of being. You know, you don't want to. That's fine. Like, there is no, like, if somebody came on here and was like, dude, I want to promote the KKK on your radio, I'd be like, shove it up your ass, motherfucker. Like, go away. I'm good. And then I'd block that dude and we'd never talk again. I'd make it a point to just cut all ties to, like, where that motherfucker just couldn't reach me. Because I'm like, no, dude, I don't want to deal with you. What the fuck is wrong with you? I don't have time. And I'm definitely not using the radio to promote that. So I get that.
Yeah.
Like, I totally get that it has to be personal choice. But at the same time, you do have to accept the fact that by making that personal choice, there's a portion of people that are going to be like, dude, he was a fucking dick. Whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm totally fine with that. Like, I'm especially fine with the KKK thinking I'm a dick. That would actually be awesome if it was just like a thing in the KKK. They were like, the Unknown Factor is a fucking asshole. I would wear that like a goddamn badge of pride. Like, dude, the KKK thinks I'm a complete dick. Points. Yeah. But I think it's something that gets lost in all of this, man, especially with this Comicgate. It's a bunch of motherfuckers going, no, you have to do it our way or you can't do it at all, which is exactly what happened in that Colorado case, and that's why the Supreme Court said, no, you don't. Like, it's your company. Now, if you work for Marvel and Marvel tells you to do something, if you want your job, you better do it. But that's because you're working for a giant fucking corporation, and that's your employer. You don't own your own business. So in that situation, it is different, and I understand that. I'm sure there are writers for Marvel that go, God damn it, I don't want to write this fucking story, but fuck, they're paying me, so I will, because that's a good paycheck. You know, I'm sure that happens. You know? But I think people lose grasp of that as far as from being an independent, like being to where you're completely independent and you are putting out your product, to compared to where you are under some kind of company. Like, God, in the film industry, I can imagine how much shit has gotten cut because it's like, man, that's too political, or that's too this, or that's too that. So,
oh yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there are deals in the movie industry, and I did this in my comic, where the Pentagon will give you access to their aircraft carriers and their jets, and something for a movie, but in return, you got to give them the script, and they go through it and decide whether or not it's okay, in terms of how it portrays the military.
Yeah.
And they may have some notes for you and say, well, we don't want you to say that or say this, or we want the guy to look more, this way or that way. And that's the trade-off. Now, I personally, I'm an anti-war guy. I think that's kind of like, whoa, man, especially if you're making a anti-war movie. There was a big problem. I think you might remember this, the Incredible Hulk movie that was directed by, who the heck was it?
Lee?
Not Ed Norton movie, the one before that.
Oh, okay.
The one
you're
that
talking
came out
about
like
the first one that was really shitty where they made his father the Absorbing Man? God, that shit pissed me off.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Eric Bana was the Hulk in that one, and Bruce Banner.
Let me see.
Anyhow, there was a big thing. They didn't want the soldiers in that one to be killed, and they didn't want to use the tanks or something. So they ended up changing the movie. Apparently, that's what I read. That was ages ago. But I mean, that was an example of the military coming in, and this was during, it was also right after 9/11, and everybody was like all about pro-America stuff. So, people forget their history. It's amazing how quickly people forget. I mean, they're just on to the next thing so quickly. It's now everybody's about the whole Nike thing. It's like, what? Where did this come from?
Wait,
you still there? I lived it. The Nike thing.
Jesus. I'm not even getting into that shit. Look, this is the other thing I have a problem with that, especially in instances like that. You're telling me that's not being used just to cover up some dumb shit going on?
Yeah, it could be. It could be a total distraction.
That's.
I mean, you just did the CIA show.
Yeah. Check out, like I said, check out the last night's episode of Aliens Ate My Broadcast. We actually got in depth on that. I mean, we didn't get in depth on the whole thing because look, if you're pissed that he's representing Nike, blow it out your asshole, please, for me and the rest of the world. Like, what the fuck is your problem?
Yeah, the whole thing is it's another polarization, it's being used to divide people and sell them product at the same time. It's like, let's try to come together. Let's make that trendy again. I mean, if you really want to do something positive in this world, the thing to do is to not point out how awful other people are. Like, you're just giving those people attention. People who are, like, really racist, like the KKK guys and all those guys, they love attention. They love it. They live for it. When I was a kid, the KKK, and I live in New Jersey, the KKK marched at a high school near here. And they were able to use the high school's, like, football field for their little wacky march. And, nobody really cared. I mean, a few people came out and said, you're a bunch of assholes. But mostly they were ignored. I mean, but if you go over there and throw rocks at them, well, now you've turned them into victims. And now you've given them attention, and they can go, see how people are? We're the ones on the right side. We got hit by rocks. So, those guys don't come around here anymore. It has nothing to do with people protesting them. It has everything to do with nobody gives a shit about what they do. Well, nobody cares.
Let me ask you two final questions, Tony.
All right.
Because I'm curious, and it's really a question in two parts more than anything else.
All right, you're drowning again. Fix your drowning before you answer.
Damn it. 10 seconds. We'll get this back.
All right. Now, he's... Frosty there, Lazy John, who's our only guy on chat.
Whoa. And I unplugged my light. I made it darker. I don't give a fuck. It's getting late, and we're about to... God damn it.
All right, you're good.
No. I've got to click one button.
Sound fine.
Oh, yeah.
What happened to you?
But no. Sorry. I had to move away from the mic to move over to the other PC to click a button. Because had I not clicked that button, it would have had a fucking terrible-ass echo the entire time. I'm going to leave it dark because, like I said, we're about to wrap this shit up. But two-part question for you. All right. One, I'm curious. What do you think the end, what do you think in the long run, how do you think this Comicgate thing is going to end? And do you think there's something that could be done to help bring the comic book community together and get it away from this at this time?
I think if it continues its current trajectory, the inevitable result will be that Myers will put out his comics, whether they're already sold. He did Kickstarter, so he's already made his money. There's going to be probably some kind of confrontation at a comic book convention where the comic book convention is going to have to choose whether or not Myers can come in, or Comicsgaters, or the regular people, let's say. And at that point, it's already started. There was a woman in Canada who, I think she was a men's rights activist. And Canada is like, well, this is like the stuff that's going on in Canada, like, makes the social justice warrior stuff down here look like nothing. I mean, they're like, super hardcore feminists and social justice, all in Canada. In their laws, they have it. And this woman did a panel about women in comics, and her take, and you could agree with this or not, but she basically said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, women should stop portraying themselves as the victims and, stand on their own 2 feet. That was kind of her message. And, initially it seemed like the panel went well, but then later somebody complained, and she felt she was attacked by feminists, and then the con kicked her out, and then she sued the con, and now she owes like a ridiculous amount of money in court costs, and she can't go to, there's almost no cons she can go to in Canada now, because apparently the con that kicked her out, like, they run all the big cons in Canada, and I guess there's not that many of them. So, you know, it's kind of a mess for her. And like, for what? Like, because this woman said some stuff in a panel. I mean, I don't think she said women are garbage. I think she made some points and people didn't like it. And it's like, well, you have no place to complain about that. Like, the things you complain about at a con is you put your table too close to mine, or, you know, you brought a weapon in here without the special thing you should put on a weapon, or you're being too loud. Like, those are con complaints, or somebody's harassing somebody. But if somebody's at a panel and they're discussing their views and you decide, well, that's harassment, no, that's not harassment. That is someone discussing their views. If you don't like it, it's not your place to kick them out. You invited them to the con. So, and kicking someone out over one complaint, in my view, is a bit extreme, especially if you did it that weekend. Like, you're going to sit here and tell me, like, okay, your con is so important that in the middle of the con, you're going to kick somebody out because of something that you saw on Twitter, or, you know, you got a complaint. Like, it's different if 50 people complain about a guy or a girl or whoever. Yeah, then maybe you got to consider kicking them out. I mean, that's a lot of people, 50 real complaints. But to me, it sounded like she got a raw deal. Now, I saw the video. It was her video, so maybe she's spinning it in a way that, you know, is dishonest. I don't know. I don't know it. But it seems to me that we can't have this, because the end result will be first it'll be the polarization of the comics, then it'll be the polarization of the distributor. They're going to make a choice. Then it'll be the polarization of the fan base. Then it'll be the polarization of the comic book cons, and we'll have separate cons. And basically the whole industry will just collapse, because the industry's small to begin with. And when you take a bunch of the fans and you split them up, or you make it so nasty that the atmosphere is just like, man, I don't want to get involved in this stuff. I just wanted to read comics. You know, when I can just imagine now being at a con and picking up a Comicsgate comic and having somebody run across the room and go, oh, my God, it's a Comicsgate comic. Don't you buy that? I mean, I don't want that. I don't want that. Like, and like, you know, the guy selling it doesn't want that either. He just wants to make $1. I just want to read a comic. So let's all put this aside. So I think it'll just continue to polarize until the industry collapses. And then when the industry collapses, who will rise out of the ashes? Well, if Marvel shutters its doors, DC won't be far behind. All the stores will go with it, and it'll all be online comics only. And guys like me in the webcomic world will be like, hey, I'm getting a lot of hits these days.
Well, I think Marvel's kind of already started to move that route.
Going all digital?
I mean, well, not all digital, but I mean, they've put an abundance of their shit to where you can get it available digitally. Like, I think they're in the proper mindset of knowing that that's where it's going. But that's honestly probably because of their corporate overlord. It's Disney. Are like, no, everything's going online. What are you doing with paper?
Yeah, I mean, when it's not profitable, and then to some extent, they're in such a big corporation, it might be fine that they could even lose money, because, you know, it could be a tax write-off for them. But at some point, the Marvel movies are going to be over. I mean, the whole trend's going to just die. You know, these days, superhero movies are everywhere. There's going to be a point where it's going to be like, oh, man, I haven't seen a superhero movie in 2 years.
Oh, Tony, I think you just picked a great next topic for next month's show.
Superhero movies?
Yeah, just in
all right.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, Tony. I think that is a great, because that's a whole nother conversation we could go into for another 2 hours. I got no doubt in my mind from the beginning to where they are to where they could end up and how much they've blown up. And that's...
What does Lazy John think about that topic? Does he like that?
I think John was like, peace, because we did say we were wrapping the show. But I don't know.
Oh, okay.
He's like, man, John didn't... What did you do to John, Tony? Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I don't know who he is. I don't know. I don't know who he is. I have no idea. I mean,
I know, John. Like I said, he's a fan of the station. But that's what. Keep in mind with no fucks.
Okay.
Keep in mind with No Fucks Given Radio, for all you fuckers out there listening. Sincerely, we like to cover an abundance of topics. We like to get all kinds of different perspectives. I mean, you got Aliens at my broadcast last night with me, DKB, Maximus, and we got into the depths of the CIA and the bullshit they tell you, how much has actually been proven, like the conspiracy theories that were said to be conspiracy theories, but they were proven to be right when shit was declassified. We got this tonight. We got deep into some comic book rhetoric, you know, trying to figure out what's going on with this Comicgate, and hopefully, you know, getting y'all a bit of knowledge. Maybe you'll fucking go pick up a random comic book, you know, even if it's just at your local library, or fucking go pick up something digitally. You know, there's all kinds of routes. Then we got tomorrow, Mike Recca's, oh, no, my bad. Tomorrow it's going to be the No Fucks Given Hour, and we've got, sorry, I had to check my calendar, Kane Cortez coming on, who's an artist down, and we're going to get into his opinions and shit just going on in the music industry. And then after that, we got Sinful Sunday, where we got Valerie Page, I had to check my calendar again, coming up, who's a transsexual porn star. And we're going to talk to her like about what it's like to get into that industry, you know. And we got all different hosts for all those shows. Chuckles, Elmo, Alma, fucking myself, Tony, the newest host over here at No Fucks Given Radio. We got Bobby Waters getting ready to start a show. God knows what kind of crazy-ass opinions he's going to get into, because that's what we're about over here, is letting motherfuckers talk freely and letting them state their opinion, you know, because you ain't got to agree with everybody, all right? Just don't make it a point to fucking argue endlessly like an asshole online. Try and live a little bit of life, you know. I mean, listen to No Fucks Given Radio, though. I do appreciate all you fuckers that do. I'm just saying. Tony, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Okay. First off, everybody go to my website, webcomicfactory.com and superfrat.com. You can read my webcomics. They're absolutely free. And, you know, you could say any comments you have to me there if you want to. I would say that I am genuine in my offer to the Comicsgaters, Mark Wade, Bill Sienkiewicz, and anybody else who considers to be a representative from the anti-Comicsgaters side. I will arbitrate the thing, we'll call it the Comic Book Peace Summit. We'll figure out a convention we could all attend. We'll have the Peace Summit. Maybe we'll get you guys all to make a comic. I'm totally serious. And then hopefully we could ratchet down this rhetoric and walk away just positive about the comic book industry. Why not? Why not do it?
Yeah. And, man, for real, my final thought, I'll tell you, for all you fuckers out there listening, whether it's after the fact on the podcast, live, on the radio, wherever it is, like what you like. Don't worry about what you hate. Just like what you like. That's the main fucking point of it. And if you can do that without being an asshole, you've done better than a lot of fucking people. On that note, have a good night.
Good night.